Chapter 1. Assemble the Party. The school bell finally sounded, and Lucas shot out of his seat like it was spring-loaded, backpack already filled to bursting. It contained books, binders, and pencils, but scant few of them were for school. The books were handbooks on the rules of journals and journeys. The binders contained pages and pages of notes about what kind of character he wanted to create, and the pencils drew doodles of elves, dwarves, and other traditional fantasy races, replete in magisterial robes or wielding twin axes of molten lightning. He wasn't what anyone would call a talented artist, but what he lacked in skill he made up for in enthusiasm. Ever since Corey had told him about the game, he'd been begging her to run a session. He'd never played a tabletop RPG before, but he loved role-playing apps and video games, and Corey had promised this would be far better. And how could it not? He'd have the opportunity to create any character he wanted, to be whoever he wanted to be. With everything going on at school and home, Lucas liked the idea of creating another fantastical world in which to live, one where he had some measure of control. To be honest, he didn't just like the idea, he craved it. If he stopped to think, he'd likely recognize the escapism for what it was and admit he was being absurd. Pretending some fantasy life could replace his real one was, at best, problematic. That's why he didn't stop to think about it. Corey had spent an afternoon preparing him for his first sojourn into the game, and she'd explained how players got to tell the story as a group, making decisions that altered the course of the world. Video games often tried to claim the same thing, but they never quite managed to deliver a story that was wholly in the hands of the players. That had represented the first problem. Corey had refused to run a game with just Lucas. She insisted on a party of at least 4. 5 would be ideal. Lucas wasn't swimming in friends, and it had taken him weeks to work up the confidence to ask his friends to play. Well, one friend in particular. Once they'd agreed, it had taken him even longer to coordinate a day that worked for all of them. Corey had turned out to be the busiest, but that made sense. She was a few years older and had already graduated, so she wasn't on the same schedule as the rest of them. The school bus sat in the parking lot collecting kids. Lucas's neighborhood wasn't very far from the school. He should have walked home. It would have been faster. He tapped his fingers on his knee, looking out of the window and willing the bus to begin its journey. Someone slid into the seat next to him. "Yo, Landover," he said. "You ready for an epic afternoon?" Lucas grinned as the bus began to inch forward, pulling out of the lot. "I've been ready for a month. What kind of character are you going to roll?" "Not sure yet." Caleb had dark skin and scarecrow limbs that had hit their growth spurt before the rest of him, giving him a distinctly lanky appearance. He elbowed Lucas playfully in the arm. "But whatever I create, it'll kick your character's ass." "It's a cooperative game. I don't think there's any reason for our characters to fight." "We can still spar." Lucas shrugged. "Or I could just concede here and now. I'm more interested in fighting dangerous monsters as a team." "Concede?" Caleb scoffed. "Are you a Landover or a pushover?" Caleb's sister in the seat across from them snorted. "Wow, that hits new levels of terrible." She absently adjusted her glasses but didn't look up from her phone. Lucas hid his smile. "She said it, not me." Both Caleb and Violet were joining him and Corey that afternoon. They were Lucas's neighbors, and proximity, both in geography and age, had forged a friendship between the 3 of them. Violet was a year younger than Lucas and Caleb, and sometimes she spent as much time with Lucas's little sister as with him, but she and Lucas had formed an early bond over their love of video games. Caleb wasn't quite as nerdy as them, but he could hold his own, especially at Call of Duty. It wasn't one of Lucas's favorite games, not enough fantasy for his tastes, but he often humored Caleb even though it usually meant he spent the evening getting obliterated. Often, at the spawn points,